You're in a meeting and someone is confidently, completely wrong. No pause. No doubt. You know the real answer. You've thought about this before, but some quiet part of you whispers, what if I'm missing something? And you say nothing. That's not insecurity. That's not a flaw in you. There's a real, measurable reason the wrong people in the room so often sound the surest and the right ones stay quiet. It has a name, and once you know it, you'll see it everywhere you look. Stick around because by the end, you'll also have an actual way to check yourself against it, not just a fact to feel smug about. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. You'd assume it's just arrogance. Some people are full of themselves, some aren't, end of story, but that's not really it. Something stranger is going on, and it isn't about arrogance at all. It's a glitch in the exact same tool you'd need to catch the glitch. Here's the part almost nobody explains properly. Knowing something and knowing how much you know are two completely different skills. The second one has a name. Metacognition. It's the part of your brain that grades your own homework. Think of it like a ruler. A ruler can measure a table, a door frame, a shelf, but what if the only tool you had to check whether the ruler itself was straight was the ruler? A bent ruler will happily tell you it's perfectly straight. It has no way to catch its own mistake. That's what happens with a skill you don't have yet. The exact knowledge you'd need to notice you're bad at something is the same knowledge you're missing. So you don't just fail. You fail with no alarm going off. In 1999, two psychologists at Cornell, David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger, tested this directly. They gave people tests on grammar, on logic, and on humor, things with real right and wrong answers even when they don't feel like it. For the humor test, they didn't just guess which jokes were funny, they brought in professional comedians to judge which ones actually landed. So there was a real, expert-verified answer key behind something as slippery as, is this joke good? Then they asked everyone to guess how they'd scored compared to the rest of the room. The people who landed near the bottom of the results, the actual weakest scores in the study, guessed they'd landed somewhere around the 60th percentile, solidly above average. In their own heads, they weren't anywhere near the bottom. They were beating most of the room. But here's where it gets more interesting. The people who scored at the very top guessed lower than they actually deserved, not by a lot, but consistently. The most competent people in the room slightly underestimated themselves. Think about that. The next time you feel like you don't know enough, that itch of self-doubt, the one that makes you check your work one more time before you send it, Dunning and Kruger's data says that it shows up far more in people who are actually good at what they do. Incompetence isn't held back by doubt. Competence is slightly, and it barely costs anything. Because doubt is exactly what keeps you checking. There's even an informal nickname people online gave to the exact spot on this curve where it's worst. They call it Mount Stupid. It's the peak of a little confidence curve, the precise moment you know just enough about something to sound like an expert, but not nearly enough to know how much you're missing. You climb it fast on almost no real knowledge, and you don't come back down until you've learned enough to see the drop. So how does this actually show up around you? Picture the coworker who's never once said, I'm not sure in a meeting. He gives the new hire a shortcut with total confidence, watches them struggle with it for a week, and never once wonders if the shortcut was wrong. Then, his internal ruler is bent, and it is quietly telling him he's doing great now. He isn't lying when he sounds sure. He's reporting exactly what his own broken instrument is showing him, a flawless test where he can't see the answers he got wrong. Or picture the friend giving you turn-by-turn directions with total certainty, insisting the shortcut is faster, right up until you're sitting in traffic on a dead-end street. He isn't being difficult. His sense of direction is the same broken ruler measuring itself, and the flip side is sitting right next to him. The teammate who actually built the thing, who knows every place it could break, who says, I think this is right, but someone should double-check me. Then, the more real skill she builds, the more edge cases and gaps and ways it could go wrong come into view. Now, her competence is exactly what's showing her the size of the mountain, which is why she sounds less certain, not more. There's also something else going on underneath all of this, and it's the part that makes online arguments feel so exhausting. A short, confident claim is easy to make and easy to post. The accurate version usually has 3 exceptions and a, well, it depends, which is a much harder thing to type in a comment box. So the loudest, simplest voice in a debate is often the least qualified one. Not because truth favors volume, but because certainty is cheap and nuance is expensive, and only one of those fits in a headline. And there's a quieter version of this closer to home, one that doesn't feel like a meeting or an argument at all. It's the parent who's completely sure they installed the car seat correctly because it clicked, and clicking felt like proof. It's the friend who diagnoses your headache in one confident sentence after reading 3 websites, while the actual doctor in the room hedges, lists 4 possibilities, and orders a test. The click and the confident sentence feel more trustworthy in the moment. They aren't. They're just louder than, let me check. Before we go any further, think about the last time you were completely sure about something and turned out to be wrong. Now think about the last time you doubted yourself and turned out to be right all along. Which one actually taught you anything? Here's the part almost nobody talks about. This isn't a personality type. It isn't fixed. In later versions of the same test, Dunning and Kruger gave people a short round of training in the actual skill, logical reasoning. Their self-estimates got dramatically more accurate afterward, not because they suddenly became modest, because the ruler itself got straighter. They finally had the knowledge required to measure their own knowledge. David Dunning later wrote about this himself in an essay called "We Are All Confident Idiots." He borrowed a term from neurology, anosognosia. It's a condition where a brain injury leaves someone paralyzed, and the injury itself damages the exact part of the brain that would notice the paralysis. The patient insists their arm works fine, right up until you ask them to move it. Dunning's point was blunt. Incompetence in ordinary daily life works almost exactly the same way. It doesn't just make you get things wrong. It removes the part of you that would catch it, not because you're careless and not because you don't care. The tool you'd use to check yourself is built out of the exact same skill you're short on. So if incompetence hides itself from you, does competence come with a warning label of its own? In a strange way, yes. In 1978, psychologists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Emis at Georgia State studied a group of high-achieving people who privately believed they were frauds, convinced they'd somehow fooled everyone into overrating them. They named it the impostor phenomenon, and once they had a name for it, they found it almost everywhere they looked. It's the same asymmetry from the other direction. The more genuinely capable people become, the more clearly they see the territory they still don't cover, and the more likely they are to mistake that clear sight for a personal failing. But let's be honest about something else. Knowing all of this doesn't automatically fix it. You can watch this entire video nod along and still walk into tomorrow's meeting with a bent ruler of your own on some topic you've never bothered to question. So here's the actual usable part. If you want to know whether you're really good at something or just comfortable, your own confidence is one of the worst tools you own for measuring it. The fix isn't be more confident. It isn't be more humble either. It's smaller and stranger than that, and it comes from a psychologist named Gary Klein. Before a decision, Klein has people imagine the future has already happened and it went badly. Not what could go wrong, which your brain will wave away, but it's 6 months from now, this failed completely. What happened? He calls it a premortem, a postmortem run in advance. Researchers who tested it found people got noticeably better. In some studies, around 30% better at spotting the real reasons something might fail, simply because they were forced to picture the failure as already real instead of merely possible. You can run the same test on yourself in 5 seconds before you speak with certainty about anything. Ask, how would I know if I were wrong? If you can't picture the evidence that would change your mind, that's the alarm that isn't going off on its own. Go looking for it on purpose before someone else has to hand it to you. It costs almost nothing, and it works precisely because it doesn't rely on your own confidence to catch your own blind spot. It hands the job to a different tool entirely, imagination instead of self-assessment, which is the one workaround for a ruler that can never fully measure itself. So the next time you're in that meeting and someone across the table is loud and certain and wrong, you don't have to feel small for staying quiet. Your doubt isn't a defect. It might be the one part of your brain that's actually doing its job. If this explained a kind of quiet self-doubt you've been carrying for a while, do me a favor and subscribe. There's someone else out there right now who needs to hear that their doubt isn't a weakness, too. If you liked how this one felt, there's another video on this channel about why your own brain quietly deletes an entire world every single morning, right when you wake up. It's right here.